Welcome to Arctic Aurora LifeScience October update. My name is Ulrika Slone-Bjerke, and with me I have Torbjörn Bjerke and Daniel Bolanovsky, and we are the management team managing the Arctic Aurora LifeScience Fund. When we are recording this update, we are one day from the US election. The US election and, of course, the pandemic have been in focus in October, as it has for the most part of 2020 now. The second wave and the intense spread of the virus in Europe and continued spread in US have created fear in the markets, and general indices were in October down approximately 3%. If you look at the biopharma sector, we see big differences between the different subsectors in our sector. So the large pharma companies have performed quite weak during October, while the biotech segment performed much stronger. For the fund, it means that we had a better performance than our benchmark, but in absolute terms, we were down. We have also had, during October, a lot of news flow regarding the COVID and the potential vaccines. And of course, vaccines are the key to the reopening of societies and economies, and that's why the focus is so intense on the development of the vaccines. So Torbjörn, maybe you can explain to us how the development is going, where we are, can we expect vaccines, and the news we have had during October.
Yes, as you said, we're very much looking forward to see the results. But there's one item that needs to be taken into account when we are waiting for the results, and that is the fact that when a subject gets into a clinical trial, that subject becomes more aware of the circumstances. So we have actually seen that the subjects that are in these very large clinical trials in the vaccine, they are more cautious. So we have seen about 50% reduction in infection. And because the fact is that we need to have COVID-19 infections in both arms, both the placebo as well as in the active, in order to show efficacy. See if there's any difference. So we were expecting to see some clinical results in the end of October, beginning of November. This is probably a couple of weeks away now. So we expect to see it during November. And the update is that Pfizer and BioNTech has been recruiting about 40,000 subjects. So they have been really good. Moderna has recruited about 30,000. So we are expecting to see some interim results during the next couple of weeks. When Pfizer has said that when they get the results, it will take about a week before they have analyzed it and comes out with a press release. So if they come within the next couple of weeks, we would expect to see about 65% efficacy, and that's good. So if that will be the case, I think some of the concerns that you related to in the market would kind of be less. So that is Pfizer and Moderna. We also see good progress in AstraZeneca, for example. They came out with some data on the more at-risk patient groups with really good results. There's been a question mark whether they would develop the same immune response as younger persons, for example, and healthy persons, and they do. So that's good. So we need to wait for a couple of more weeks.
So what is the lowest number of efficacy that is kind of acceptable?
Yeah, if you look at the influenza vaccines, that's about between 50 to 60%. So I would assume that would be the threshold.
That would be enough to actually show an effect on the spread of this virus.
Exactly.
And can you be certain and comfortable that they are safe?
We will have about Moderna as well as BioNTech, Pfizer, it's the same mechanism, so to say, and so it's about 70,000 subjects. So yes, I would say so. They have also produced quite a few vaccine doses, so they can start in the end of this year to distribute that, especially for subjects at risk, as well as people working at the hospitals and so on.
So I remember when President Trump was hospitalized, he got kind of wonder cocktail of antibodies.
Yep.
And after that, he kind of recovered. And now, a few weeks after, we got more data supporting that wonder cocktail. So can you talk about it?
Trump got the Regeneron.
Yeah.
Obviously, Regeneron is a biotech company, not a drug. So, and Regeneron has developed this cocktail of different types of antibodies that binds to this virus with the hope of getting sort of an antiviral effect. And so the data so far, I think, has shown that it works, especially in patients in two groups where it works in particular well compared to placebo, and that is if you have a high viral load early on in your disease, you have a high chance of getting a severe case of COVID-19, or if your immune system is not activated and you don't produce antibodies of your own. So if you put the Regeneron's antibody cocktail into these patients, they will do better as far as we've seen so far. Where it doesn't work, and this goes as well for Lilly has a similar approach, an antibody program, same sort of results. Where Lilly and Regeneron's antibodies did not seem to work in its later stage patients. So when they've had COVID for a while and the inflammatory portion of this disease takes over, not so much the virus part, but the body's own immune system goes berserk, and antibodies will not be there to treat it. The threat of the virus is not as strong anymore.
So in general, you need to treat earlier to get a better effect.
Yes.
And actually, we have invested in a company with possibilities to develop a treatment to push down the virus in much earlier phase than remdesivir that Gilead has. And can you talk a bit about this company and the potential drug they are developing?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Atea Pharmaceuticals, I guess you're referring to. So Atea Pharmaceuticals is all about treating viral diseases, and I've actually taken this with me. And what this tells you is, as Daniel also alluded to, you have a viral phase here in the beginning of the disease. You get the virus, and then the virus replicates and it multiplies many times, and then that results in an inflammation phase. If you can't stop this viral phase, then you get infections. Symptoms at this stage, where you don't have so much infection, is you can have cough, you can lose your smell and your taste. But if you get over here, then it gets really dangerous, and you can need ventilation, you need oxygen, and you can get into ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and you can die. So what Atea does with AT527 is actually a little bit the same as remdesivir that was approved by the FDA, the U.S. authorities, earlier on this month, where you stop this replication of the virus. So what Atea does is really to being a per-oral. You can go in earlier, and you can stop this virus replication earlier, so it doesn't get into this inflammation phase. So this is extremely key, and it's actually the first per-oral antiviral within COVID-19.
So remdesivir is an intravenous drug, right? So
yes.
You need to be plugged into it in a hospital setting.
Yeah. So remdesivir you give later on here, and then the efficacy is less because you almost finish this viral replication phase at that point of time. So that's key. So Atea, we invested in a crossover round in May for the first time. And then we participated in the IPO. Actually, that took place last week. Friday last week was the first trading day. It went up about 26% to a market cap of about $2.445 billion US dollar. The founder of this company is Jean-Pierre Sommadossi. I have known him for 17 years. He also founded Idenix Pharmaceuticals that was bought by Merck for 3.8 billion, and he also co-founded Pharmacet that was bought by Gilead for 11 billion, and that transformed the way of treating hepatitis C, for example. So he's a very known bio-entrepreneur, and they are now in phase 2.
So we're just waiting for the company to be sold now.
No, because what they did that was also extremely smart. They did a deal with Roche, and they licensed out the ex-US rights for this compound. And they kept the US rights, the very important US market. So they can be cash cow positive very soon if this is an successful drug. So what we're waiting for now, in the first place, are the phase 2 data. They will come in the beginning of next year. And then they need to do a phase 3, a larger study. And they are also thinking, together with Roche, they're thinking about it also as a prophylactic drug. If you are in an environment with high exposure of the virus, you can take it. But the important thing here is that we will live with COVID-19 for quite a few years more. And then if you get the symptoms of a respiratory symptoms, then you can take this drug if successfully developed and avoid getting into inflammation phase. So that's good.
So COVID, as we said, has been in focus, of course, from markets and from investors. But we also have all the other areas where we are invested. And for example, within oncology, we have had some interesting data this month. We have 2 companies involved in developing treatments for difficult types of lung cancer, hitting a very specific target that earlier was seen not to be druggable. And they came, or one of the companies came with data this month. And Daniel, would you tell us about this?
Yes, so we're talking about Mirati Therapeutics. They gained more than 30% this month, and now has a market cap of over 10 billion US dollars. So quite a journey there. And so the target you mentioned has been a sort of a difficult nut to crack for researcher. It's a protein called KRAS, and you can see it as an on and off switch of cell growth and cell division. And of course, tumors or cancers is uncontrolled cell growth and cell division. And what happens in some cancers is that this KRAS protein gets switched on all the time through mutations. So it keeps telling the cells to grow and multiply. And it's been known for a long time, this cancer driving gene, but we haven't been able to actually address this with a drug because we haven't seen any sort of druggable pockets in this protein. So a challenge for all the biochemists out there who finally actually solved the puzzle in specific mutations of this protein. So the first companies to be able to target this in clinical trials are Amgen and Mirati. So we're already seeing data from Amgen in lung cancer. It's been pretty good. And now Mirati at a cancer conference this month presented data that were just as good, perhaps better.
Maybe a little bit better.
Maybe some
maybe
science. These are early stage trials. A few patients probably couldn't draw too many conclusions, but they seem to work pretty well. This is monotherapy, so already promising. If we can combine this with other cancer agents, it could be even better.
And with non-small cell lung cancer as the main target, it's a huge medical need,
millions
and
of
a
patients.
huge market opportunity.
Yeah, we're talking about this particular mutation exists in about 14% of all non-small cell lung cancer patients, which is about 95% of all lung cancer patients. So may sound like a small portion, 14%, but there's a lot of patients in absolute terms.
So it's super positive for the patients, and it's also positive for our Mirati holdings, of course. Yeah. So other small, mid-cap, even almost large cap.
Large cap, yes. So Vertex was in focus this month for not so good reasons. So what they did was announce data from one of their development pipeline programs in a disease called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Won't go into too many details in this particular rare disease. It affects lung and liver function, but it's an interesting target for many companies within rare diseases, including Vertex. Unfortunately, the data that Vertex presented, or they just mentioned that this lead compound did not have an effect on these patients, and even saw some safety signals, which is a bad thing. So they folded this first attempt of challenging alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. And the stock tanked 20%, which equates to about $15 billion in market value just during one day. There's no way that this project alone is worth $15 billion, but the signal value here is that investors have been looking to Vertex for sort of the next step in their corporate journey. They are by far the leaders in cystic fibrosis. They own that market completely, billions of dollars each year in sales. So everyone was looking at the next step, and that haven't materialized yet. And I think questions are being asked about their whole pipeline. Now, speaking of this disease, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, last month, Arrowhead, an RNA interference company, showed initial positive data in this disease. And then, I think on October 8th, they actually signed a deal with Takeda, almost a little bit similar to Atea. They didn't keep all the U.S. rights, but they're splitting U.S. rights 50-50 with the Japanese pharma company, and then Takeda takes care of the rest, and Arrowhead gets royalties. And they also got a nice $300 million upfront for this.
Yeah,
so
it was the same.
So Arrowhead showed positive data on their own. They signed a nice deal, and then one of their main competitors folded, at least initially, in the Vertex failure. So Arrowhead stocks were up more than 30% this month. So,
and Arrowhead is also within the segment of SMID biotechs, we can say.
And a portfolio company, of course.
And a portfolio company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you look at the small mid-cap biotech space, it's a very high appetite for that type of companies. And it's quite amazing because it has been strong the whole year. Maybe you can comment a bit about the IPO.
Oh yes, the appetite for the IPOs has been really, really good. So now we see this year we see a bit more maturated IPOs. It's phase 2, mostly phase 2. Been a lot of oncology, the cancer space, but also new coming companies within other indications. And a couple of months ago, they were all up in average about 50%. Now they're all up in average about 30%. And there's been raised a lot of money for these companies. So the appetite is good. We have participated in some of them, in club deals, because the appetite is so high. It's difficult to get in there, but we have managed to do so. And the last one was Atea Pharmaceuticals.
So I think the number of IPOs so far this year is 72. So 72 listings of biotech stocks in this difficult year is an amazing figure. In 2019, I think it was around 50. So we are already record high. And that shows the great interest in this part of the industry where all the innovation is. But looking at the larger companies, as we mentioned, they have had quite a tough year, and the large pharma companies have underperformed the smaller ones and also been weaker than general markets, and that's clearly an effect of the U.S. election, which has caused a pressure on the large pharma stocks. And it's of course that people sometimes bring back the discussion around drug pricing. But if you look at the interim reports that were released during October showing the third quarter results, we see very strong results. So if we look at Merck, for example, the sales of their very important oncology drug Keytruda were back on track after some COVID interruptions earlier in the year. We also saw strong reports from AbbVie, for example, very resilient business. And the only company that were showing slightly weaker results were Lilly, where we saw price pressure on the diabetes franchise, specifically on one of their large selling drugs, Trulicity, that they use in the treatment of type 2 diabetes, where we saw price mix changing and deteriorating. And that's in line with the scenario that we have communicated earlier, that we think certain areas of the market will have less good pricing while others will be stronger. And tomorrow we have the US election, and tomorrow we will, maybe not tomorrow, but in the near future, we will know who is going to be the president. And we will have an answer to all these questions that have been flying around in the market. But we will come back to that next month. And
hopefully we have a result next month.
Hopefully we have a result. And we are excited to tell you more when we come back for the November update. Thank you.